The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dense forest. Alex adjusted their camera strap and sighed contentedly as they surveyed the day's work. As a nature photographer, there was nothing quite like capturing the raw beauty of untouched wilderness. Today's shots, a family of deer grazing by a stream, sunlight filtering through ancient trees, had been particularly rewarding. Now, with darkness settling in, it was time to retreat to the small tent pitched near the edge of a clearing. Alex moved around the campsite methodically, lighting a portable lantern and arranging supplies for the night. The forest was alive with sounds. The chirping of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, and the gentle rustling of leaves stirred by the evening breeze. It was peaceful, almost meditative. Yet, despite the serene atmosphere, a faint prickling sensation lingered at the back of Alex's neck, as if they were being washed. Shaking off the feeling, Alex zipped up the tent and settled onto their sleeping bag. They opened the journal they always carried on trips, jotting down notes about the day's adventures. But just as they were finishing a sentence, a soft noise outside interrupted their thoughts. It wasn't the usual symphony of nocturnal creatures. It was something different, something deliberate. Pausing mid-sentence, Alex strained their ears. There it was again, a faint shuffle, like footsteps brushing against dry leaves. Their heart began to race, but they reminded themselves that curiosity often trumped fear when you spent most of your life exploring wild places. Carefully, Alex reached for the flashlight beside them and switched it on, its beam cutting through the dim interior of the tent. With slow, cautious movements, they unzipped the tent flap just enough to peek outside. At first, all they saw was the familiar silhouette of towering trees swaying gently in the wind. Then movement caught their eye. A figure standing near the edge of the clearing, illuminated faintly by the moonlight streaming through gaps in the canopy. At first glance, Alex thought it might be another camper who had wandered too far from their own sight. But as their eyes adjusted, they realized this wasn't human. The figure was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver under the pale light. Long, delicate limbs ended in fingers tipped with what looked like translucent claws. Her face was angular yet beautiful, framed by hair that seemed to float around her head like strands of fine silk. Most striking of all were her eyes. They glowed faintly blue, pulsing softly as though alive. For a moment, neither moved. Alex froze, unsure whether to call out or retreat further into the safety of the tent. Their mind raced with questions. Was this some kind of hallucination brought on by exhaustion? Or was this real? Then the figure turned her head slightly, and her glowing eyes locked onto Alex's. Panic surged through them as they realized they'd been spotted. Before Alex could react, the mysterious woman bolted, disappearing into the thick foliage with astonishing speed. Branches snapped and leaves rustled as she vanished into the depths of the forest, leaving behind only silence. Breathing heavily, Alex scrambled out of the tent, flashlight in hand. They scanned the area where the figure had stood moments ago, searching for any sign of her presence. At first, it seemed as though she'd left nothing behind, but then something glinted in the dirt. Kneeling down, Alex picked up a small, smooth object no larger than the palm of their hand. It was cold to the touch, its surface etched with intricate patterns that shifted subtly when tilted in the light. "What is this?" Alex whispered aloud, turning the object over in their hands. Despite its strange appearance, it didn't feel threatening. If anything, it radiated a sense of mystery, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Back inside the tent, Alex examined the artifact more closely under the glow of the lantern. Its surface shimmered faintly, almost as if responding to their touch. For reasons they couldn't explain, Alex felt drawn to it, compelled to keep it close. Little did they know, this encounter would set off a chain of events that would change their life, and perhaps the fate of an entire species, forever. As Alex finally drifted off to sleep, the artifact resting safely beside them, the forest outside remained eerily quiet. Somewhere deep within its shadowy expanse, unseen eyes continued to watch, waiting for the right moment to reveal their secrets. The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy, casting dappled light across Alex's tent. They woke slowly, their minds still groggy from the strange events of the previous night. At first, everything seemed normal. The chirping birds, the cool breeze brushing against the tent fabric. But then Alex remembered the shimmering figure and the peculiar object she had left behind. Reaching for the artifact, Alex picked it up cautiously. It felt heavier than it looked, its surface smooth yet slightly warm to the touch. The intricate patterns etched into it seemed to shift faintly, almost as if alive. Alex stared at it intently, trying to make sense of the symbols. Some resembled constellations, while others looked like flowing rivers or branching trees. Whatever this thing was, it clearly wasn't made by human hands. Curiosity gnawed at Alex. Who, or what, had created it? And why had the alien woman dropped it during her hasty retreat? Determined to uncover more, Alex rummaged through their backpack for a notebook and pen. They began sketching the patterns, hoping that documenting them might reveal some hidden meaning. But no matter how hard they tried, the symbols refused to yield any answers. Frustrated but undeterred, Alex decided to take a closer look outside. Maybe the surrounding area held clues about the mysterious woman or her origins. Gathering their gear, including the artifact and a flashlight, they stepped out of the tent into the crisp morning air. The forest was alive with activity, squirrels darting between branches, insects buzzing lazily, but there was an odd stillness beneath it all, as though the woods themselves were holding their breath. Alex retraced their steps to where they'd seen the woman last night. The ground was littered with footprints, both theirs and hers. Her tracks were unlike anything Alex had ever seen, long, slender impressions in the dirt, each marked with faint claw-like indentations. Following the trail, Alex noticed something unusual. Patches of vegetation along the path appeared wilted, as if drained of life. Was this evidence of the woman's presence, or something else entirely? As they ventured deeper into the forest, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every rustle of leaves sent a shiver down their spine, but when they turned to investigate, nothing was there. Still, they pressed on, driven by a mix of fear and fascination. After nearly an hour of walking, they stumbled upon a small clearing. In its center stood a massive tree, its gnarled roots twisting upward like the fingers of a giant hand reaching for the sky. What caught Alex's attention, however, was the object resting at the base of the tree. It was similar to the one they had found near their tent, but much larger, about the size of a dinner plate, and embedded partially in the soil. Its surface glowed faintly, pulsating with a soft, rhythmic light. As Alex approached, the artifact emitted a low hum, vibrating gently under their touch. Suddenly, the patterns on its surface lit up, projecting holographic images onto the nearby trees. Streams of glowing symbols spiraled outward, forming complex shapes and diagrams. One image showed a map of the stars, with lines connecting constellations Alex didn't recognize. Another depicted a series of structures resembling towering spires, surrounded by swirling clouds of light. The final projection was the clearest, a warning symbol, sharp and angular, accompanied by a flashing red pulse. Alex's heart raced. This wasn't just a random piece of alien technology. It was communicating something important. But what? Was it a message meant for someone else, or did it hold significance for Earth itself? The possibilities swirled in Alex's mind, overwhelming yet exhilarating. Realizing they needed help deciphering the artifact's secrets, Alex carefully photographed the projections with their camera. They also noted the location of the clearing in their journal, marking it as a potential starting point for further exploration. Before leaving, they took one last look at the massive tree, wondering if it held any connection to the artifacts or the mysterious woman. On the way back to camp, Alex's thoughts kept returning to the figure they'd seen the night before. Why had she run when she saw them? Had she been afraid? Or was she trying to protect herself, or perhaps even Alex, from something greater? And who exactly were her people? The questions piled up, each more intriguing than the last. Back at the tent, Alex sat cross-legged on the ground, studying the smaller artifact again. For reasons they couldn't explain, holding it felt comforting, as though it carried a piece of the unknown world it belonged to. Though nervous about venturing deeper into the mystery, Alex knew one thing for certain. They couldn't ignore what had happened. Something extraordinary was unfolding in this forest, and they were now part of it. As evening approached, Alex packed up their belongings, preparing to head toward the clearing once more, armed with curiosity, determination, and the enigmatic artifact. They resolved to find answers, not just for themselves, but for the mysterious woman who had crossed their path. Little did they know, the journey ahead would lead them far beyond the boundaries of their understanding, into realms both wondrous and perilous. The next morning, Alex woke with a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. The forest still surrounded them, its towering trees, its rustling leaves, but now it felt different. It wasn't just a place of beauty anymore. It was a puzzle waiting to be solved, a gateway to something far greater than they could have imagined. With the smaller artifact safely tucked into their backpack and the photographs of the glowing projections ready for reference, Alex set out once again toward the clearing. As they walked, Alex couldn't help but notice how the forest seemed to change subtly around them. The air grew cooler, carrying an almost electric charge that prickled against their skin. Plants along the path shimmered faintly in the sunlight, their colors more vibrant than usual. Even the animals appeared uneasy. A squirrel darted across their path, chittering loudly, while birds took flight from nearby branches, as though startled by some unseen presence. Alex paused for a moment, glancing around cautiously. They had always trusted their instincts in the wild, and right now, those instincts were screaming that something was off. But instead of turning back, they pushed forward. Whatever this something was, it was connected to the artifacts, and to the mysterious woman who had left them behind. After nearly an hour of navigating through increasingly dense underbrush, Alex reached the massive tree at the center of the clearing. Its roots twisted upward like ancient claws, framing the larger artifact embedded in the soil. Up close, the object was even more mesmerizing. Its surface pulsed rhythmically, casting soft waves of light over the surrounding area. The patterns etched into it seemed alive, shifting and rearranging themselves, as though responding to Alex's presence. Kneeling beside the artifact, Alex examined it closely. Unlike the smaller one, this version emitted a faint hum that resonated deep within their chest. When Alex touched it, the hum intensified, and the holographic projections reappeared, brighter and sharper than before. This time, new images emerged, scenes of strange landscapes dotted with crystalline structures, vast oceans glowing with bioluminescence, and skies filled with multiple suns. It was breathtaking, otherworldly, and utterly alien. But amidst the beauty, there were also signs of destruction. One projection showed a fleet of sleek ships fleeing through space, pursued by shadowy vessels armed with weapons that fired beams of blinding energy. Another depicted planets consumed by fire and ash, their surfaces reduced to barren wastelands. Alex felt a chill run down their spine. These weren't just random images, they were memories, warnings, perhaps even pleas for help. Suddenly, the artifact's light dimmed, and the projections vanished. A low vibration coursed through the ground beneath Alex's feet, followed by a distant rumble that echoed through the forest. Startled, Alex stood up and scanned the area. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but then they noticed movement near the edge of the clearing. Something large was approaching, its shape obscured by the thick foliage. Heart pounding, Alex grabbed their backpack and backed away slowly. The vibrations grew stronger, accompanied by a metallic grinding sound that sent shivers down their spine. Then, without warning, a creature emerged from the shadows. It wasn't alive, not in the traditional sense. Its body was composed of interlocking metal plates, each gleaming dully in the sunlight. Its limbs ended in sharp, claw-like appendages, and its head was dominated by a single, unblinking red eye. Alex froze, unsure whether to run or stay put. The machine advanced steadily, its movements precise and deliberate. As it drew closer, Alex noticed symbols etched into its surface, similar to those on the artifacts. For a brief moment, they wondered if this thing was somehow connected to the alien woman or her people. But any hope of peaceful interaction vanished when the machine raised one of its claws, the sharp edges glinting menacingly. Instinct kicked in. Alex turned and bolted, weaving between trees and leaping over fallen logs. Behind them, the machine gave chase, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. Panic surged through Alex's veins, but they forced themselves to focus. Running blindly wouldn't save them. They needed a plan. Spotting a narrow ravine ahead, Alex veered sharply to the left, hoping to lose their pursuer in the dense undergrowth. To their relief, the machine hesitated at the edge of the ravine, its sensors scanning the terrain. Taking advantage of the momentary pause, Alex scrambled down the steep slope, using roots and rocks to steady themselves. Once at the bottom, they pressed themselves against the damp earth, listening intently for any sign of pursuit. For several tense minutes, all they heard was the sound of their own ragged breathing. Slowly, cautiously, Alex peeked over the edge of the ravine. The machine was gone, though the disturbed vegetation marked where it had stood moments earlier. Relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't natural, and it clearly didn't belong here. Climbing back up the ravine, Alex made their way cautiously toward the clearing once more. Though shaken, they refused to abandon their quest for answers. If anything, the encounter with the machine only deepened their resolve. There was no denying it now. The forest held secrets far beyond human comprehension, and Alex was determined to uncover them. When they returned to the massive tree, the artifact's glow had dimmed significantly, almost as if it had expended its energy during the confrontation. Kneeling beside it, Alex placed their hand on its surface. A faint warmth radiated from the metal, comforting despite everything that had happened. Somewhere in these objects lay the key to understanding not just the alien woman, but the machines hunting her, and perhaps even the fate of her people. With renewed determination, Alex packed up their gear and prepared to continue their journey deeper into the forest. Every step carried uncertainty, every shadow hinted at danger. But Alex knew one thing for certain. They were no longer alone in this wilderness. Whether friend or foe, the unknown had found them. And there was no turning back. The forest seemed quieter than usual as Alex ventured deeper, their senses heightened after the encounter with the metallic machine. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig felt like a potential threat. Yet, despite the danger lurking in the shadows, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being led somewhere, guided even. The artifacts had shown them glimpses of an alien world, and now it was time to find the source of those visions. Hours passed as Alex navigated through increasingly dense underbrush, following faint traces left behind by the mysterious woman. Broken branches, disturbed patches of moss, and occasional scorch marks on tree trunks hinted at her presence, or perhaps the machines pursuing her. Each clue fueled Alex's determination, but it also kept them alert. They knew better than to let their guard down again. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, casting long golden rays through the canopy, Alex stumbled upon another clearing. This one was smaller than the last, almost hidden beneath a thick layer of vines and overgrown shrubs. At its center stood a peculiar structure, a smooth oblong pod partially buried in the earth. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting the fading sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. It looked both ancient and futuristic, as though it had been waiting there for centuries. Alex approached cautiously, their breath catching in their throat. The pod bore markings similar to those on the artifacts, glowing softly as if alive. Before they could examine it further, A soft sound came from behind them, a gentle rustling, barely audible above the wind. Spinning around, Alex saw her, the alien woman. She emerged from the trees silently, her movements graceful yet cautious. Her shimmering skin caught the light, and her glowing blue eyes locked onto Alex's. For a moment, neither moved. Then, slowly, she raised a hand, palm outward, in what seemed like a gesture of peace. Alex hesitated, then mirrored the motion, holding up the smaller artifact they'd found near their tent as if offering it back. The woman tilted her head slightly, studying Alex with an expression that was difficult to read. Was it curiosity? Caution? Relief? Whatever it was, she stepped closer, her gaze shifting between Alex and the artifact. When she finally spoke, or rather, emitted a series of melodic tones accompanied by flickering lights emanating from her fingertips, Alex realized this was her way of communicating. Though the language was incomprehensible, Alex understood the intent. She wanted the artifact. Carefully, Alex extended their hand, placing the object into hers. As soon as her fingers closed around it, the artifact lit up brightly, projecting holographic symbols into the air. The woman studied them intently, nodding as if confirming something important. Encouraged by her reaction, Alex pointed to the larger artifact embedded in the ground at the base of the massive tree they'd visited earlier. Using gestures and exaggerated expressions, they tried to convey that more of these objects existed, and that they might hold answers. To their surprise, the woman responded by touching her temple, then pointing at Alex's chest. It took a moment, but Alex understood. She was asking if they could see the memories stored within the artifacts. Eager to demonstrate, Alex retrieved their camera and showed her the photos of the projections. The woman's eyes widened slightly, and she placed a hand over her heart, emitting another series of tones. Though Alex couldn't understand the words, the gratitude in her demeanor was unmistakable. Through a combination of gestures, images, and trial and error communication, Alex learned fragments of her story. Her name, or at least the closest approximation Alex could manage, was Lyra. She belonged to a race called the Averin, nomadic beings who traveled across galaxies in search of safe havens. Centuries ago, her people's ship had crash-landed on Earth, forcing them to adapt and survive while repairing their vessel. But recently, seismic activity had awakened ancient machines buried deep beneath the planet's surface, machines designed to eradicate anything deemed non-native. These automatons, cold and relentless, now hunted the Averin relentlessly, driving them into hiding. Lyra explained that the artifacts were part of a beacon system meant to guide her people's mothership to safety. However, something had gone wrong during activation, leaving the signal incomplete. Without help, the beacon would never reach its intended destination, and her people would remain stranded and vulnerable. Alex listened intently, their mind racing. They weren't sure how much they could contribute, but they knew they couldn't walk away. Nodding firmly, they gestured toward the pod-like structure in the clearing, then pointed deeper into the forest, mimicking the act of searching. Lyra hesitated, her glowing eyes clouded with uncertainty. Finally, she nodded and gestured for Alex to follow her. Together, they set off into the woods, moving swiftly and silently. Along the way, Lyra occasionally paused to touch certain trees or rocks, leaving behind faint traces of luminescent energy. Alex wondered if these were markers for her people, or perhaps warnings for others. Despite the tension of their surroundings, there was an undeniable sense of camaraderie growing between them. Though they came from vastly different worlds, their shared goal united them. As twilight settled over the forest, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Alex couldn't help but marvel at the situation. Just days ago, they had been a lone photographer seeking solace in nature. Now they were embarking on an interstellar mission alongside an alien woman, determined to save an entire civilization. The thought was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. Ahead, Lyra stopped suddenly, raising a hand to signal caution. Beyond a cluster of trees lay another clearing, larger than the ones they'd seen before. In its center stood a towering device resembling the artifacts, but far more intricate and imposing. This, Alex realized, must be the final piece of the beacon system, the key to completing the signal. But as they stepped closer, a low hum filled the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of grinding metal. From the shadows emerged not one, but three of the hunting machines, their red eyes locking onto Alex and Lyra. Panic surged through Alex, but Lyra remained calm, stepping protectively in front of them. With a swift motion, she activated the smaller artifact, bathing the area in a brilliant blue light. The machines faltered, their movements momentarily disrupted. Seizing the opportunity, Lyra grabbed Alex's hand and pulled them toward the beacon. Time was running out, and they both knew it. If they didn't activate the final component soon, everything they had worked for would be lost. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, Alex followed Lyra into the heart of the clearing, ready to face whatever came next. The clearing was bathed in an eerie blue glow as Lyra activated the smaller artifact, its light pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. The machines hesitated, their mechanical forms twitching slightly as if confused by the sudden surge of energy. For a fleeting moment, Alex dared to hope they might have bought enough time to reach the beacon, but the reprieve was short-lived. With a deafening whir, the machines recovered, their red eyes locking onto Alex and Lyra with renewed intensity. Their claw-like appendages snapped open, and their bodies moved with terrifying precision, advancing steadily despite the interference caused by the artifact's glow. Lyra tightened her grip on Alex's hand, pulling them toward the towering device at the center of the clearing. Every second counted now. As they approached the beacon, Alex could see why it was so crucial. Unlike the smaller artifacts, this one was massive, easily twice their height, and covered in intricate patterns that shimmered faintly even without external light. At its base was a circular indentation, perfectly shaped to fit the smaller artifact Lyra carried. It was clear what needed to be done. Inserting the artifact would complete the signal, but getting close enough to do so felt nearly impossible with the machines closing in. Lyra turned to Alex, her glowing blue eyes filled with urgency. She gestured toward the beacon, then pointed at herself before mimicking the act of placing the artifact into the slot. Alex understood immediately. She intended to distract the machines while Alex completed the task. Shaking their head vehemently, Alex tried to protest. There had to be another way. Risking Lyra's life wasn't something they could accept. But Lyra's expression softened, and she placed a gentle hand on Alex's shoulder. Her melodic tones filled the air again, accompanied by flickering lights that seemed to convey reassurance. Through their limited communication, Alex realized Lyra wasn't asking for permission. She was making a choice. This was her fight, her people's survival on the line. And though Alex wanted desperately to argue, they knew deep down that Lyra was right. They couldn't activate the beacon alone, not with those machines bearing down on them. Reluctantly, Alex nodded, clutching the backpack containing the camera and notes they'd gathered along the way. Lyra gave them one last look, a mixture of gratitude and resolve, before turning to face the advancing machines. With a swift motion, she raised the smaller artifact high above her head, its blue light intensifying until it illuminated the entire clearing. The machines faltered again, their movements stuttering as they struggled to process the overwhelming energy. "Go," Alex shouted, though they doubted Lyra could understand the word. Still, the message was clear. Taking a deep breath, Alex sprinted toward the beacon, dodging low-hanging branches and leaping over roots. The hum of the machines grew louder behind them, but Alex forced themselves not to look back. Instead, they focused on the task ahead. Reaching the base of the beacon, Alex quickly located the circular indentation. Their hands trembled as they reached for the artifact Lyra had entrusted to them earlier, the one they'd found near their tent. Placing it carefully into the slot, they braced themselves for what came next. The moment the artifact clicked into place, the beacon roared to life. A cascade of light erupted from its surface, spiraling upward in dazzling beams that pierced through the canopy and shot into the sky. Holographic projections burst forth, more vivid and complex than anything Alex had seen before. Maps of distant star systems unfolded, accompanied by streams of data written in alien script. The air vibrated with energy, and the ground beneath their feet trembled slightly. Despite the awe-inspiring display, Alex didn't have time to marvel at it. Behind them, the sound of grinding metal grew deafening. Turning around, they saw Lyra still holding off the machines, her body bathed in the artifact's radiant glow. The machines were struggling, their movements sluggish, but they hadn't given up. One of them lunged forward, its claws narrowly missing Lyra as she sidestepped with remarkable agility. "Lyra!" Alex called out, waving frantically for her to join them. But instead of retreating, Lyra stood her ground, raising the artifact higher. Its light flared brilliantly, forcing the machines to retreat momentarily. Then, with a final burst of determination, she hurled the artifact directly at one of the machines. The impact caused a small explosion of sparks and smoke, temporarily disabling the creature. Seizing the opportunity, Alex ran toward Lyra, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the safety of the beacon. Together, they stumbled back just as the remaining machines regrouped, their red eyes burning with fury. Though battered, the machines began advancing once more, their relentless pursuit unyielding. "We need to finish this," Alex said, speaking aloud even though Lyra couldn't understand. "We're almost there." Returning to the beacon, Alex examined the controls etched into its surface. Though the symbols were unfamiliar, some of them matched the ones they'd documented in their journal. Using trial and error, Alex pressed a sequence of glowing panels, each touch eliciting a new wave of light and sound. Finally, the beacon let out a deep, resonant hum, and the holographic projections coalesced into a single coherent image, a map of the stars, with one point marked in bright green. "That must be the mothership," Alex muttered, pointing excitedly at the projection. Lyra nodded, her expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. But their celebration was cut short as the ground shook violently beneath them. The machines, enraged by the activation of the beacon, were converging on their position with terrifying speed. Lyra stepped forward, positioning herself between Alex and the machines. Her stance was resolute, her glowing eyes unwavering. She gestured firmly for Alex to stay behind her, leaving no room for argument. Understanding dawned on Alex. They weren't out of danger yet. If anything, the worst was still to come. As the machines closed in, Lyra activated the smaller artifact once more, its light surging with renewed strength. The forest around them seemed to pulse with energy, the trees swaying as if caught in a storm. Alex watched in stunned silence as Lyra faced the machines head-on, her figure illuminated by the beacon's glow. For all her courage and resilience, Lyra was outnumbered, yet she refused to back down. In that moment, Alex realized that this wasn't just about saving her people, it was about protecting someone who had risked everything to help them. Clutching the artifact tightly, Alex made a decision. They wouldn't let Lyra face this alone. With the beacon fully operational and the signal sent, all that remained was survival. And Alex was determined to ensure both of them made it out alive. The forest was alive with chaos. The beacon's light pierced the sky like a lighthouse calling to distant shores, but its brilliance only seemed to enrage the machines further. Their metallic forms glinted menacingly in the pulsating glow, their red eyes burning with an almost sentient fury. Lyra stood firm between Alex and the advancing automatons, her shimmering form illuminated by the artifact she clutched tightly in her hand. Her expression was resolute, though Alex could see the strain in her glowing eyes. "Lyra, no," Alex shouted, stepping forward despite the danger. They couldn't let her face this alone, not after everything she had done for them. But Lyra turned sharply, her melodic tones cutting through the cacophony of grinding metal and snapping branches. Though Alex couldn't understand the words, the meaning was clear. "Stay back. This was her fight, her sacrifice. But Alex refused to accept that. Clutching the smaller artifact, the one they'd found near their tent, they scanned the clearing frantically for anything they could use to help. The beacon hummed steadily behind them, its signal now broadcasting into the cosmos. Somewhere out there, Lyra's people were receiving the message. All they needed was time. But time was running out. One of the machines lunged suddenly, its claws slashing through the air where Lyra had been moments before. She moved with incredible speed, dodging each attack with fluid grace. Still, Alex could see she was tiring. The energy from the artifact flickered faintly, as if struggling to keep up with the strain of repelling 3 relentless adversaries. Desperation surged through Alex. They couldn't just stand there and watch. Spotting a fallen branch nearby, Alex grabbed it and rushed toward the nearest machine. With all their strength, they swung the makeshift weapon at its head, aiming for the glowing red eye. The impact sent a shower of sparks flying, and the machine staggered backward, momentarily stunned. Alex, move. Lyra's voice, or rather, the melodic tones she used to communicate, cut through the din. Alex obeyed instinctively, diving aside just as another machine swiped at them with razor-sharp claws. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the machines regrouped, their movements more aggressive than ever. Lyra stepped forward again, placing herself squarely in harm's way. Her artifact flared brightly once more, bathing the clearing in a radiant blue light. The machines recoiled slightly, their sensors overwhelmed by the surge of energy. Seizing the opportunity, Alex scrambled toward the beacon, searching for any controls or mechanisms that might amplify its power. If they could boost the signal, maybe the mothership would arrive sooner and end this nightmare. Alex sank down onto a fallen log, their legs too weak to hold them any longer. They stared at their hands, still trembling slightly from the adrenaline coursing through their veins. In one hand, they clutched the smaller artifact, the object that had started it all. Its surface no longer shimmered or pulsed. It felt cold and lifeless, almost like an ordinary piece of metal. But Alex knew better. This small, unassuming object had connected them to something far greater than themselves, to another world, another species, and a story they would carry with them for the rest of their days. As the reality of what they'd just experienced settled over them, Alex couldn't help but think about Lyra. Her bravery, her sacrifice, it weighed heavily on their heart. She had risked everything to save her people, even when it meant placing herself in harm's way. And yet, she had also shown kindness, trust, and compassion toward Alex, a stranger from a completely different world. Without her guidance and determination, none of this would have been possible. A soft breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of damp earth and pine needles. Alex closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them. For the first time since the encounter began, they allowed themselves to feel the full weight of what they'd witnessed and survived. It wasn't just awe or wonder anymore. It was gratitude. Gratitude for having been part of something so extraordinary and for meeting someone as remarkable as Lyra. When Alex finally opened their eyes, they noticed something unusual. The metallic debris left behind by the machines was slowly being absorbed into the soil, dissolving like frost under the morning sun. Even the scorch marks on the trees seemed to fade, replaced by fresh green shoots pushing through the charred bark. It was as though the forest was reclaiming itself, erasing the scars inflicted upon it by forces beyond comprehension. Standing up, Alex took one last look at the beacon before gathering their belongings. There was nothing left to do here. The signal had been sent, the mothership had arrived, and Lyra was safe with her people. Whatever purpose the artifacts had served in this place, it was fulfilled. Still, Alex couldn't bring themselves to leave without saying goodbye. Not to the forest, not to the memories it held. Walking back to their campsite, Alex packed up their gear methodically, folding the tent and securing their supplies. As they worked, their thoughts drifted to how much had changed in such a short time. When they'd set out on this trip, They'd expected nothing more than solitude and inspiration for their photography. Instead, they had stumbled into a mystery that spanned galaxies, forged bonds with beings they never imagined existed, and played a role in saving an entire civilization. When everything was packed, Alex paused at the edge of the clearing where they'd first seen Lyra. The spot looked ordinary now, indistinguishable from the rest of the forest. Yet Alex could still picture her standing there, the way her skin shimmered under the moonlight, the intensity of her glowing blue eyes, the grace with which she moved. Taking a deep breath, Alex whispered softly, "Thank you." With that, they turned and began the long journey back to civilization. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of physical exhaustion, but because of the knowledge that they were leaving behind something truly magical. By the time they reached their car parked miles away, the sun had dipped below the horizon once more, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Alex sat inside for a moment, staring at the steering wheel, unsure of what came next. Back home, life resumed its usual rhythm. But Alex was forever changed. They poured their experiences into their work, capturing the beauty of nature with a newfound appreciation for its mysteries. In quiet moments, they would take out the journal filled with sketches and notes, revisiting the symbols etched into the artifacts and marveling at the photographs of holographic projections. Though they doubted anyone would believe their story, it didn't matter. What mattered was that they remembered. Months later, while hiking in a different forest, Alex came across a patch of unfamiliar plants glowing faintly in the twilight. Their hearts skipped a beat as they approached cautiously. Kneeling down, they touched one of the leaves, feeling a familiar warmth radiating from it. For a fleeting moment, they thought they saw a figure moving among the trees, a tall, slender silhouette bathed in silver light. But when they blinked, it was gone. Smiling to themselves, Alex stood and continued walking. Whether it was imagination or something more, they didn't know, nor did they need to. The forest had spoken to them once before, and perhaps it would again someday. Until then, they carried the memory of Lyra and the Averin in their heart, a reminder that the universe was vast, mysterious, and full of wonders waiting to be discovered. And as the stars twinkled above, Alex knew they weren't alone.